Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suray Satchit Sukha Sarupaya Swamine Tapoharine. We bow down to Swami Vivekananda, who was the king of the monks, and he was the embodiment of existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute, and who is the savior of the soul and the lover of humanity. We bow down to Vivekananda again and again. Om Shanti, 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 peace, peace, peace be told. Friends, we are observing Vivekananda festival. This we started 43 years ago, in 1980. Today is the 4th of July, American Independence Day. America got independence from the British in 1776. And they have a declaration of independence. And they established democracy, the oldest democracy in the world, USA. I remember when I was in college, we had to memorize the definition of democracy. Abraham Lincoln said, government of the people, by the people, for the people. That is democracy. This democracy is very, very important. That is the reason the Vedantic concept of God is a democratic concept of God. Each human being is God, divine. And Swami said, America is the best place to teach democracy, to Vedanta. Why? These two things are in the blood of the American people, freedom and democracy. Freedom and democracy. And Vedanta teaches those things. Freedom is the song of the soul. Each one is free. The Atman is ever free. All is free. The America's symbol, I call it the Statue of Liberty. That is the presiding deity of the American people. Freedom. America cannot bear slavery and dictatorship. Freedom. It was in 1998 at Kashmir. Swamiji wrote a poem to the 4th of July. Some American disciples, Mrs. Willie Bull, Josephine MacLeod, they are also there. Swamiji wrote that beautiful poem. O son, today thou sheddest liberty, the highest of freedom on mankind. And 4 years later, 4th July 1902, Swami Vivekananda departed from this world. It is really astonishing that why Swamiji selected 4th of July to give up his body. It was in Amarnath in 1898. Swamiji went to that Shiva temple, and that Lord Shiva gave him a boon, that death will be under your palm. Whenever you want to die, you can die. I hope everybody should get that kind of boon. Anyhow, Swamiji had that boon. And he selected that date. He had no disease. Physically, he was strong, but he gave up his body. What was his last message? Wait and meditate till I call you. That is the last words he told his Sevak, his attendant. That is a significant remark, you know. Swamiji lived 39 years, 5 months, 24 days. 39 years, 5 months, 24 days. He said, I shall never see 40. What is his contribution to the mankind? Swamiji says, I have given enough for 1,500 years. You read his life, his works, and his other volumes and volumes of books. I feel to the Western people, Swamiji left 4 books. Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga. Those are the manuals of Vedanta philosophy. If you read those 4 books, you know what true religion is, what God is. It is those I always say, please read those 4 yogas. What does it say? Each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity by controlling nature, external or internal. Do this either by work or worship or psychic control, by one or more or all of these, and be free. This is the whole of religion. How beautifully Swamiji says. This divinity of man struck in the minds of the American people. You see, according to Christian doctrine, Papavad, they are born sinners. Swamiji is contradicted at the Parliament of Religions in Chicago on 19th September 1893. Sinners, it is a sin to call a man so. It is a standing libel on human nature. You are divine. You are the children of immortal bliss. That is the way Swamiji addressed the American people. These American people are the lovers of something new. It is a new nation. Our civilization, 5,000 years old. They love something new. They are very open-minded. Not all, most of them. Swamiji says, I love the Yankees. And he gave the best part of his life in this country, 5 years. Swamiji stayed in the West. One day, it was in New York, most probably in 1895. Henry Van Hagen, Swamiji's Dutch devotee, was telling Swamiji, very few people are coming to receive the sublime teachings of Vedanta. Swamiji says, if I want, I can attract thousands. I want a very few who will carry my message. Swamiji has another wonderful devotee, Ellen Waldo, who recorded the inspired talks at 1000 Allen Park in 1895. There's a beautiful book on Vedanta philosophy. Swamiji was in the New York, far away, in the poor areas, cheapest rent. But time to time he was tired eating that food. Swamiji used to go to Brooklyn, the other side of the New York City, and used to have food with Ellen Waldo. Swamiji gave her a name, Haridasi, and gave her brahmacharya vows. Swamiji sometimes used to scold her. Then one day she was telling Swamiji, perhaps I am not good to serve you. Ellen, why do you say so? Sometimes when I am frustrated, when I could not see the way out, I release my emotion, my things to my own people whom I know. I know you. And the person I love, I scold them. Do you know why? For their welfare. Swamiji one day said to some American people, today you may curse me, but tomorrow you will bless me, because I always think good of you. I am your well-wisher. How Swamiji loved these people. Ellen wrote one of her reminiscences. One day in the living room, Swamiji was pacing back and forth. And sometimes there is a big mirror in her living room, and Swamiji is standing on the front of the mirror and watching himself. Ellen understood, perhaps Swamiji was very proud, egotistic person. So he's watching himself in the mirror. Then Swamiji came this side and said, Ellen, do you know what? Something strange happened. The moment I see in front of the mirror, I see my body. The moment I go away from the mirror, body disappears. He knew that he was the Atman, formless, bodiless. That is the reason he says, I am a form. I am a voice without a form. That is our Swamiji. No body consciousness, nor a Brahman. There are so many stories. When I came to this country, I used to go to the people, those who personally knew Swamiji. And they used to tell me so many stories. I remember I went to Thousand Island Park, Ridgely, in 1972. Again, several times I went. So I became friend of Paul Sturgis. Paul's father was Hollister. Hollister was the son of the Mrs. Leggett by her first marriage, Becky Leggett. So Paul told me, Swami, I heard my father one day ask, Father, could you tell me about God? Well, I never thought about it. But do you know, my son? Swamiji told me God exists. So I believe God exists. Then he told that my father one day overheard that Swamiji was laughing. He was meditating in front of what is called the fireplace. Swamiji was laughing. Swamiji, why are you laughing? You know, Holly, I was thinking how God is such an interesting, fine person. He had so many experiences. Swamiji. I remember we used to go to Swamiji's house. Before I shall tell another incident about Mrs. Frances Leggett. I met her in 1976. Swamiji attended her parents' marriage in Paris, American church. I went to that church in Paris. So Swamiji was seated in the living room, and this 4-year-old girl, Frances, brought some flower and gave to Swamiji. And Swamiji blessed her. Well, this is the way in the East the children pay respect to the teachers. There are so many stories, incidents we know connected with this family. Swamiji was in Camp Percy. I went there in New Hampshire. Swamiji was told Francis Leggett, Josephine McLeod, I am going to read my Gita under this tree. You go and prepare breakfast for me. So Betty and Chanchin, they are making breakfast. And Chanchin came and saw Swamiji was unconscious on the ground. Then she cried out. Then Mr. Leggett came and said, I shall shake his body and bring consciousness. Chanchin said, don't touch his body. He told me, when I am in that state, Nobody should touch me. After a few minutes, he got back his consciousness. He was in Samadhi, Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Joe, I am very hungry. Give me breakfast. Well, we saw who Swamiji was. You know, when we see that his relationship, her with these American people, we were really amazed. It was, I shall not tell many stories because many of you shall. Swamiji was going back to America, to India. So he stopped in Chicago with the Hell family. Mary Hell made bed for him. Then next morning he came and found Swamiji was standing near the window. And he saw the bed was untouched. Did you not go to Did you not go to sleep last night? Swamiji looked at her. Do you know what she said? He said, I was just thinking how to break this human bond. I love you so much because you people will never see me again. I am going to depart from this world very soon. It was 1900. Swamiji passed away in 1902. That was his last visit to America. What a beautiful way he says. It is how difficult it is to cut the human bond. Swamiji loved American people. Not through his heart, through his brain. All through, he loved these people. It was in San Francisco. Swamiji one day was telling these American people, Madam, I might have to be born again. Why, Swamiji? Because I fell in love with human beings. That is our Swamiji. Anyhow, I can go so many things to tell you, but I just give you some brief thoughts about Swamiji. And the summer vacation is coming from tomorrow. Some people ask Swami, what book shall I read in summer? Read the Reminiscences of Vivekananda, Monastic Disciples of Vivekananda, and our new book will be out on Wednesday, Stories of the Vedanta Monks. Read that book. That you will find so many stories of the Sri Ramakrishna disciples. That would be our summer task, summer vacation. Om asatoma sadgamaya, tamasoma jyotirgamaya, mritturma amritam gamaya, avirabirma yedhi, rudra jatte dakshinam mukham, tenamam pahi nityam, om shanti, shanti, shanti. Lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness to light, lead us from death to immortality, light us through and through, and guide us evermore with thy loving presence. Peace, 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 and hope. Now our program, George Albertus will now conduct this symposium. This program we started, that these are the devotees program. We want to know how our devotees are studying Vivekananda, Vedanta. We want to evaluate their knowledge. That is the reason we started this program. Now George will conduct this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Swami. We are very glad to see all of you here, as well as those watching on YouTube, for the resumption of our Vivekananda July 4th festival. Even though we can't feed you this year, we're glad to be able to provide a program for you. And the program that Swami has provided and planned is very diverse. So you will hear some readings of Vivekananda's poetry, of his letters, a song, a reading of some things that Vivekananda said about himself, and then finally a symposium where 4 of our devotees will tell you about what Vivekananda particularly means to them. As Swami said, this is a nice opportunity for you and all of us to see some of the devotees here at the podium instead of Swami every Sunday. So it's kind of a flipping of the camera, which we appreciate. We will begin with a reading of Swami Vivekananda's poem, Song of the Sannyasin, by Richard Hoffman.
At Thousand Island Park in New York, in July 1895, Swami Vivekananda composed this poem. He titles it The Song of the Sannyasin. Wake up the note, the song that had its birth far off, where worldly tent could never reach, in mountain caves and glades of forest deep, whose calm no sigh for lust, our wealth, our fame could ever dare to break, where rolled the stream of knowledge, truth, and bliss that follows both. Sing high that note, Sannyasin bold, say Om Tat Sat Om. Strike off thy fetters, bonds that bind thee down, of shining gold or darker baser ore, love, hate, good, bad, and all the dual throng. No slave is slave, caressed or whipped, not free. For fetters, though of gold, are not less strong to bind, then off with them, Sannyasin bold, say, Om Tat Sat Om. Let darkness go, the will-o'-the-wisp that leads with blinking light to pile more gloom on gloom. This thirst for light, this thirst for life, forever quench. It drags from birth to birth and death to birth the soul. He conquers all who conquers self. Know this, and never yield, Sannyasin bold. Say, Om Tat Sat Om. Who sows must reap, they say, and cause must bring the sure effect. Good, good, bad, bad, and none escape the law. But whoso wears a form must wear the chain. Too true. But far beyond both name and form is Atman, ever free. Know though thou art that, Sannyasin bold, say Om Tat Sat Om. They know not truth who dream such vacant dreams as father, mother, children, wife and friend, the sexless self, whose father he, whose child, whose friend, whose foe is he who is but one. The self is all in all, none else exists, and thou art that, Sannyasin bold, say, Om Tat Sat Om. There is but one, the free, the knower, self, without a name, without a form or stain, in him is Maya, dreaming all this dream. The witness, he appears as nature, soul. Know thou art that, Sannyasin bold, say, Om Tat Sat Om. Where seekest thou that freedom, friend, this world, nor that can give? In books and temples vain thy search. Thine only is the hand that holds the rope that drags thee on. Then cease lament, let go thy hold, Sannyasin bold. Say, Om Tat Sat Om. Say, peace to all, from me no danger be, to aught that lives, in those that dwell on high. In those that lowly creep, I am the self in all. All life both here and there do I renounce. All heavens and earths and hells, all hopes and fears, thus cut thy bonds, Sannyasin bold. Say, Om Tat Sat. Om. Heed then no more how body lives or goes, its task is done. Let karma float it down. Let one put garlands on, another kick this frame and say naught. No praise or blame can be, where praise or praised, and blame or blamed are one. Thus be thou calm. Sannyasin bold, say Om Tat Sat. Om. Truth never comes where lust and fame and greed of gain reside. No man who thinks of woman as his wife can ever perfect be. Nor he who owns the least of things, nor he whom anger chains, can ever pass through Maya's gates. So give these up, Sannyasin bold. Say Om Tat Sat. Om. Have thou no home, what home can hold thee, friend? The sky thy roof, the grass thy bed, and food what chance may bring. Well cooked or ill, judge not. No food or drink can taint that noble self, which knows itself, like rolling river free. Thou ever be, Sannyasin bold. Say Om Tat Sat. Om. Few only know the truth, the rest will hate and laugh at thee, great one. But pay no heed, go thou, the free, from place to place and help them out of darkness. Maya's veil. Without the fear of pain or search for pleasure, go beyond them both, Sannyasin bold. Say Om Tat Sat. Om. Thus, day by day, till karma's powers spent, release the soul forever. No more is birth, nor I, nor thou, nor God, nor man. The I has all become. The all is I, and bliss. Know thou art that. Sannyasin bold, say Om Tat Sat. Om. That was composed at Thousand Island Park, New York, in July 1895. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Vivekananda certainly talked about his highest ideals in that poem. Next, we're going to enjoy a song by one of our youngest devotees. Tanvi Maharaj is going to sing Jaya Viresvara.
Jaya Viresvara Viveka Bhaskara Jaya Jaya Shri Vivekananda Induni Bharana Sundara Lochana Induni Bharana Sundara Lochana Vishvamanava Chiravandya Induni Banana Sundara Lochana Vishvamanava Chiravandya Jaya Viresvara Viveka Bhaskara Jaya Jaya Shri Vivekananda Nadara Dara Kanti Suvimala Adigada Vida Vedanta Prema Dara Dara Kanti Suvimala Adigada Vida Vedanta Tyagati Diksha Tapasya Ujvala Tyagati Diksha Tapasya Chita Niramala Santa Jaya Viresvara Viveka Bhaskara Jaya Jaya Shri Vivekananda Ma Bhakti Jnana Trishula Dharana Chedana Jiva Mohabanta Karma Bhakti Jnana Trishula Dharana Chedana Jiva Mohabanta Brahma Parayana Namo Narayana Brahma Parayana Namo Narayana Dehi Dehi Charanara Vinta Jaya Viresvara Namaskara Jaya Jaya Shri Vivekananda Induni Banana Sundara Lochana Induni Banana Sundara Lochana Vishwamanava Chiravandya Induni Banana Sundara Lochana Vishwamanava Chiravandya Jaya Viresvara Viveka Bhaskara Jaya Jaya Shri Vivekananda Jaya Jaya Shri Vivekananda Jaya Jaya Shri Vivekananda
Thank you, Tanvi. Very nice singing. Vivekananda wrote many things, including a lot of letters. And so we're going to hear two of those today, read for us by Rajani Cherukuri.
Good morning, everybody. I'll be reading a couple of letters written by Swami Vivekananda from the book Vivekananda, the Yogas and Other Work. A letter written to to Sister Nivedita, 63 St. George's Road, London, 7th June 1896. Dear Miss Noble, my ideal indeed can be put into a few words, and that is to preach unto mankind their divinity and how to make it manifest in every moment of life. This world is in chains of superstition. I pity the oppressed, whether man or woman, and I pity more the oppressors. One idea that I see clear as daylight is that misery is caused by ignorance and nothing else. Who will give the world light? Sacrifice in the past has been the law. It will be, alas, for ages to come. The earth's bravest and best will have to sacrifice themselves for the good of many, for the welfare of all. Buddhas by the 100 are necessary with eternal love and pity. The religions of the world have become lifeless mockeries. What the world wants is character. The world is in need of those whose life is one burning love, that is being selfless. That love will make every word fall like a thunderbolt. It is no superstition with you, I am sure. You have the making in you of a world mover, and others will also come. Bold words and bolder deeds are what we want. Awake, awake, great one, the world is burning with misery. Can you sleep? Let us call and called till the sleeping gods awake, till the God within answers to the call. What more is in life? What greater work? The details come to me as I go. I never make plans. Plans grow and work themselves. I only say, awake, awake. May all blessings attend you forever. Your affectionately, Vivekananda. Next letter is written to Miss Mary Hill, Almora, 9th July, 1897. Dear sister, there is a society watching my work and getting help for it. And 4 respectable persons followed me to India to help my work, braving everything, and dozens were ready, and the next time I go, hundreds will be. It would have made your heart glad to see how my boys are working in the midst of famine and disease and misery, nursing by the mat bed of the cholera-stricken pariah, and feeding the starving Chandala. And the Lord sends help to me, to them, to all. What are men? He is with me, the beloved, as he was when I was in America, in England, when I was roaming about unknown from place to place in India. What do I care about what they say? The babies, they do not know any better. What? I, who have realized the spirit and the vanity of all earthly nonsense, to be swerved from my path by baby's prattle? Do I look like that? I had to talk a lot about myself because I owed that to you. I feel my task is done. At most 3 or 4 years more of my life are left. I have lost all wish for my salvation. I never wanted earthly enjoyments. I must see my machine in strong working order, and then, knowing for sure that I have put in a lever for the good of humanity, which no power can drive back, I will sleep without caring what will be next. And may I be born again and again and suffer thousands of miseries, so that I may worship the only God that exists, the only God I believe in, the sum total of all souls. And above all, my God the wicked, my God the miserable, my God the poor of all races, of all species, is the special object of my worship. He who is in you and outside of you, who works through every hand, who walks through every foot, whose body you are, him worship and break all other idols. He who is the high and the low, the saint and the sinner, the God and the worm, him worship, the visible, the knowable, the real, the omnipresent, break all other idols, in whom there is neither past life nor future life, nor death, nor going nor coming, in whom we always have been and always will be one. Him worship, break all other idols. Ye fools who are neglecting the living God and his infinite reflections, of which the world is full, and running after imaginary shadows leading to quarrels and fights. Him worship, the only visible one. Break all other idols. My time is short. I have got to unbreast whatever I have to say, without caring if it smarts some or irritates a few. Therefore, my dear, dear Mary, do not be frightened at whatever dropped from my lips, for the power behind me is not Vivekananda, but he, the Lord, and he knows best. If I have to please the world, that will be injuring the world. The voice of the majority is wrong, seeing that they govern and seeing the sad state of the world. Your ever affectionately, Swami Vivekananda. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajani. I think that I probably never learned as much about Vivekananda as when I read his letters, because amazingly his superb eloquence is not only found in his speeches and his writings, but in his letters to individuals you heard some of the quotes that we know already in that letter to Mary Hale. So if you want some extra summer reading, I would highly recommend the letters of Swami Vivekananda, where you can really get a more intimate glimpse of what he was about than you do in his speeches. Speaking of glimpses of Vivekananda, there is also a very nice book that is called Vivekananda on Himself. And so we're going to enjoy a couple of selections from that book, and we'll learn some personal things too, read for us by Maria-Grazia Cappiello.
So I'll be reading a few passages from the book Swami Vivekananda on Himself. From chapter 1, Birth and Boyhood. For the salvation of his own soul and for the good and happiness of the many, the Sannyasin is born in the world, to sacrifice his life for others, to alleviate the misery of millions, rending the air with their cries, to wipe away the tears from the eyes of the widow, to console the heart of the bereaved mother, to provide the ignorant and oppressed masses with the ways and means for the struggle for existence, and enable them to stand on their own feet, to preach broadcast the teachings of the Shastras to one and all, without distinction for their material and spiritual welfare, to rouse the sleeping lion of Brahman in the hearts of all beings by the diffusion of the light of knowledge. For these, the Sannyasin is born in the world. It is for the consummation of this purpose in life that we have taken birth, and we shall lay down our lives for it. My father and mother fasted and prayed for years and years so that I would be born. I know that before I was born, my mother would fast and pray and do hundreds of things which I could not even do for 5 minutes. She did that for 2 years. I believe that whatever religious culture I have, I own to that. It was consciously that my mother brought me into the world to be what I am. Whatever good impulse I have was given to me by my mother, and consciously, not unconsciously. The love which my mother gave to me has made me what I am, and I owe a debt to her that I can never repay. How many times I have seen my mother going to take her first meal when it was 2 o'clock. We took ours at 10, and she at 2 because she had so many things to attend. For example, someone knocks at the door and says, "Guest," and there is no food except what was for my mother. She would give that to him willingly and then wait for her own. That was her life, and she liked it. And that is why we worship mothers as gods. Every night, ever since I had reached my youth, as soon as I went to bed, 2 ideals appeared before me. One vision presented me as a person of endless wealth and property, innumerable servants and dependents, high rank and dignity, great pomp and power. I thought that I was seated at the head of those who were called big men in the world. I felt that I certainly had the power to achieve this end. Again, the next moment, I felt as if I had given up everything of the world and was leading a life for renunciation, putting on a loincloth, eating whatever was available without effort, spending nights under trees and depending solely on God's will. I felt I could live the life of the rishis and the munis if I wanted. These 2 opposite pictures, according to which I could mold my life, thus arose in my mind. But the latter would grip the mind in the end. I thought that it was in this way alone the man could attain real bliss, and that I should follow this path and not the other. Brooding on the happiness of such a life, my mind would then merge in the contemplation of God, and I would fall asleep. It is a matter of astonishment that this happened every night for a long time. When I was a boy here in the city of Calcutta, I used to go from place to place in search of religion, and everywhere I asked the lecturer, after hearing very big lectures, "Have you seen God?" The man was taken aback at the idea of seeing God, and the only man who told me, "I have," was Ramakrishna Paramahansa. And not only so, but he said, "I will put you in the way of seeing him too." From chapter 2, Discipleship. For the first time, I had found a man who dared to say that he saw God. The religion was a reality to be felt, to be sensed in an infinitely more intense way than we can sense the world. I began to go to that man day after day, and I actually saw that religion could be given. One touch, one glance can change a whole life. I had read about Buddha and Christ and Mohammed, about all those different luminaries of ancient times, how they would stand up and say, be thou whole, and the man became whole. I now found it to be true, and when I myself saw this man, all skepticism was brushed aside. It could be done. And my master used to say, religion can be given and taken more tangibly, more really than anything else in the world. The second idea that I learned from my master, and which is perhaps the most vital, is the wonderful truth that religions of the world are not contradictory or antagonistic. They are but various phases of one eternal religion. That one eternal religion is applied to different planes of existence, is applied to the opinions of various minds and various races. From chapter 3, Sri Ramakrishna, my master. Sri Ramakrishna never spoke a harsh word against anyone. So beautifully tolerant was he that every sect thought that he belonged to them. He loved everyone. To him, all religions were true. He found a place for each one. He was free, but free in love, not in thunder. The mild type creates, the thundering type spreads. Ramakrishna came to teach the religion of today, constructive, not destructive. He had to go afresh to nature to ask for facts, and he got scientific religion, which never says believe, but see. I see, and you too can see. Use the same means and you will reach the same vision. God will come to everyone. Harmony is within the reach of all. Sri Ramakrishna's teachings are the gist of Hinduism. They were not peculiar to him, nor did he claim that they were. He cared not for name or fame. Know truth for yourself, and there will be many to whom you can teach it afterwards. They will all come. This was the attitude of my master. He criticized no one. For years, I lived with that man, but never did I hear those lips utter one word of condemnation for any sect. He had the same sympathy for all sects. He had found a harmony between them. A man might be intellectual, or devotional, or mystic, or active. The various religions represent one or the other of these types. Yet, it is possible to combine all the four in one man, and this is what future humanity is going to do. That was his idea. He condemned no one, but saw the good in all. He advocated and strove to establish absolute freedom of thought. He was a great yogi. Sri Ramakrishna is a force. You should not think that his doctrine is this or that, but he is a power, living even now in his disciples and working in the world. I saw him growing in his idea. He is still growing. Sri Ramakrishna was both a Jivan Mukta and an Acharya. Whoever could have thought that the life and teachings of a boy born of poor Brahmin parents in a wayside Bengal village would, in a few years, reach such a distant lands as our ancestors never even dreamed of? I refer to Bhagavan Ramakrishna. From the very date he was born has sprung the Satya Yuga, the golden age. Henceforth, there is an end to all sorts of distinctions, and everyone, down to the Chandala, will be a sharer in the divine love. The distinction between man and woman, between the rich and the poor, the literate and illiterate, Brahmins and Chandalas, he lived to root out all. And he was the harbinger of peace, the separation between Hindus and Mohammedans, between Hindus and Christians, all are now things of the past. The fight about distinctions that there was belonged to another era. In this Satya Yuga, the tidal wave of Sri Ramakrishna's love has unified all. Whoever, man or woman, will worship Sri Ramakrishna, be he or she ever so low, will be then and there converted into the very highest. He was the savior of women, savior of the masses, savior of all, high and low. In the presence of my master, I found out the man could be perfect, even in this body. And to conclude, a passage from chapter 10, I believe. I believe in God, and I believe in man. I believe in helping the miserable. I believe in going even to hell to save others. Of course, I would commit a crime and go to hell forever if by that I could really help a human being. I might have to be born again because I have fallen in love with man. I do not believe in a God or religion which cannot wipe the widow's tears or bring a piece of bread to the orphan's mouth. I have nothing whatever to do with ritual or dogma. My mission is to show that religion is everything and in everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria-Grazia. You've helped add to our understanding of Swamiji. We're going to change focus a little here. We've been talking about Swamiji himself and hearing his words and his writings, but the main goal of any spiritual teacher is to change disciples' lives. And this symposium that we've been doing for some time is a good opportunity to find out from people personally how Vivekananda has an impact on them. Hence Swami's selection of the title, What Vivekananda Means to Me. So we're going to start with Sajal Das.
Om Shahana Babatu Shahano Bunaktu Shaho Viryang Karababahai Tejashina Madhitamastu Mavid Vishabahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The meaning of this Shanti mantra from Taittiriya Upanishad is Om, O Lord, may we all be protected. May we all be nourished. May we work together with great energy May our intellect be sharpened. Let there be no animosity amongst us. Om, peace in me, peace in nature, and peace in divine forces. Happy 4th of July, dear revered Swami Chetanananda Maharaj, other respected Swamis, the Symposium moderator George Albertus, distinguished devotees, guests, and friends. I'm honored and privileged to speak at this auspicious occasion on a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. The topic is what Vivekananda means to me. To me, Vivekananda is a vast institute. He is an infinite source of knowledge, courage, inspiration, motivation, dedication, conviction, commitment, self-confidence and reliance, and a positive thinker. Vivekananda was not only a spiritual giant, he was the exponent of practical Vedanta. Extremely knowledgeable on different subjects, from science to religion, from anthropology to psychology, from social sciences to education. And he could read minds of people because of that inner power that he had. Okay? And he had tremendous observation power. I'm constantly in a journey of discovering and understanding Swami Vivekananda through his multifaceted personality, as he was known to be the cyclonic monk of India. Okay? It's really mind-boggling to me that in just 39 years of his life, what kind of stain did Vivekananda leave behind that is still intact and equally applicable today, even after 159 years of his birth? Why couldn't space and time limit him? The main reason, I believe, is Swami Vivekananda's philosophy and teachings and messages are unique, universal, and eternal. Yet they are simple to practice in daily life by everyone: householders, monks, youngsters, youths, adults, everybody. Now, I'm a teacher, a learner, an educator, and a mentor. So I can't help but discuss Swamiji's groundbreaking thoughts on education in the spirit of Vedantic teachings and messages. Swamiji realized that education alone could only revive India, awaken the society, and bring the light of hope. Therefore, he dedicated himself to teaching the mass, spreading the real and total education, not just from the bookish knowledge. He gave a profound definition of education with a deeper meaning. Education is the manifestation of the perfection already in man. Education is the manifestation of the perfection already in man. Such a simple, profound definition of education in a simple sentence. This fundamental definition is extremely significant, worth realizing. Every human being has tremendous potential, the manifestation and development of which is the true education. Swamiji emphasized on holistic and practical education. Quoting him, we want the education by which character is formed, strength of mind is increased, the intellect is expanded, and by which one can stand on one's own feet. He gave foremost importance to character building, which is quintessential for the formation of a healthy society. Swamiji wanted the students to have strong moral and self-confidence. True education is a pillar of the social foundation. Learning with humility is the key. It brings respect. Shraddhavan labhote jnanam. Now, Vivekananda, when I was a student at school and college, of course, we read little books about Vivekananda, lots of beautiful quotes, simple sentences that strike in your mind. So one of the quotes, of course, we all know, that arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached. Uttisthita jagrata prappa varano nibodhata. Okay, I'll give a few quotes before I come to the next subject. Some other quotes, many others, of course, I like it very, very much. Expansion is life, contraction is death. And as Swamiji mentioned, each soul is potentially divine, and religion is the divinity in man. Now, many dignitaries all around the world were very much fond of Swamiji's messages on teachings and learnings, as we all know. Now, Rabindranath Tagore, the Indian Nobel laureate poet, expressed his thoughts about Vivekananda, that if you want to know India, study Vivekananda. In him, everything is positive and nothing negative. Vivekananda inspired, directly or indirectly, many freedom fighters, many patriots in India, including Mahatma Gandhi, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, and many others. They all were inspired by his teachings, his writings, his messages, his books. Because Vivekananda himself was a passionate patriot. He loved India and humankind from the bottom of his heart. So this is a quote from Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. How shall I express in words my indebtedness to Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda? It is under their sacred influence that my life got first awakened. If Swamiji has been alive, I would have been at his feet. Now, Swamiji, of course, was a seeker of truth from direct experience. He never settled for half-truths nor relative truths. He's a role model to me, role model to many others, or many of us, right? Because what Vivekananda said, he demonstrated in his own life. He did it. He's a tremendous leader with organizational abilities. He founded and established the Ramakrishna Mission, Mott and Mission in 1897. After 125 years, this is the year, 125th years of Ramakrishna Mission and Mott, the discipline and the order is still running the same way as he prescribed. Not because Swami Vivekananda had said, because his process and methods are so universal, independent of space and time, that they are still applicable today to run an organization very, very smoothly. Now, Vivekananda, of course, gave a lot of interesting messages to us for internalization and externalization of ourselves and thoughts. How to manifest the full potential. I'm a student of science. I'm a teacher in computer science. Now, in science, we acquire knowledge. We first observe facts, then generalize and draw conclusions. Thus is the experimental nature of science. Similarly, the knowledge of mind, the very internal nature of human being and of thought, can never be acquired until we have the power of observing facts that are going on within us. It is relatively easy to observe facts in the external world because many instruments have been invented for this purpose. But in the internal world, our inner self, we have no instrument. Yet we must observe to have a real science. There is a deeper meaning, which is experiential in nature, as per the Vedanta teachings. According to Swami Vivekananda, the science of Raja Yoga proposes a means of observing the internal states. The instrument is the mind itself. The power of attention, when properly guided and directed toward the internal world, will analyze the mind and illumine facts for us. The power of the mind is like rays of light dissipated. When concentrated, they illumine. This is our only means of knowledge, self-illumination. An awakening which can be regarded as the light. In this context, an important question is, in the human being, what is the light that illuminates itself and illumines others? According to Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the light of man is the self, the Atman, the Brahman. So before I conclude, please allow me to say a few words about myself. And it will be relevant in the context. I was born and brought up in a small village in Bardhaman district in India. The village is adjacent to a historic small town called Dainhat, about 90 miles north of Calcutta, on the bank of river Bhagirathi, the Ganges. Why do I bring that in the context? Because Dainhat was the home of Navin Bhaskar, the famous architect who sculpted the Mother Kali idol at Dakshineshwar temple, and that became the divine play of Sri Ramakrishna. After passing out from Dainhat High School, at the age of 16, I was admitted at the Ramakrishna Mission Residential College at Narendrapur near Kolkata. This top-ranking educational institute is famous for academic rigor, but more importantly, the strict discipline and dedication to the man-making, character-building education, following the ideals of Swami Vivekananda. I spent 3 years of my cherished life at Narendrapur Ramakrishna Mission Ashrama in its lavish green meditative campus, under the loving care of sannyasis, brahmacharis, and passionate teachers. We grew academically, physically, mentally, and spiritually. The life and teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and Vivekananda became a constant source of inspiration. At Narendrapur, we had a mandatory Indian culture class beyond the academic curriculum, in which we were taught Indian scriptures, Vedas, Upanishads, Gita, and many others. The Vedantic seed that was germinated more than 40 years ago has a lifelong impact and influence on me. Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sajal. I'm so glad that you tied in all of your educational background into this topic, because that's one of the superior benefits of Vivekananda's approach to education, is that it was multifaceted. It wasn't just about developing an intellectual capacity, which is where we often stop in our schools, but as you pointed out, it also involves moral education, character education, and service of others. So all of those things are part of that approach, and I'm sure that you pass some of that on to your students as you teach today. Our next speaker is Mary Walsh.
Good morning, Swami. Good morning, everyone here. Happy 4th of July. It's a pleasure and an honor to speak today. After your lecture, I'm not an educator. I'm a mom and have been associated with the Vedanta Center for many, many years. My story is very personal, so I will begin. After the passing of Sri Ramakrishna in 1886, Narendra and his fellow disciples lived at the Baranagar monastery practicing austerities and laying the spiritual groundwork for the Ramakrishna mission in math. Wanting to find more solitude, Narendra began his wanderings in 1891. Swami Nikolananda tells us in Vivekananda, the Yogas, and other works about this particular incident. In Benares one day, a large troop of monkeys pursued him. As he was running away, a monk called out to him, "Face the brutes." He stopped and looked defiantly at the monkeys, and they quickly disappeared. Later, as a preacher, he sometimes used this experience to exhort people to face the dangers and vicissitudes of life and not run away from them. In thinking of our theme, what Vivekananda means to me, this story has had the most impact on me. Whenever I find myself dismayed, confused, fearful of the future, I think of Narendra. I think of him scared of the advancing beast nipping at him and making him run faster and faster, never able to actually outrun the demons. And I can identify and listen to Vivekananda saying to me, "Face the brutes." What is appealing to me about Swamiji is this unique understanding of the human condition. I like to think the great saints don't suffer the human weaknesses and failures that I face. But Swamiji himself struggled with fear and self-doubt. When he traveled all over India, when he traveled to America, to Europe, and then again back to America, in constant motion to convey the Master's teachings, he yearned to remain a monk in meditation. But his great message, the message of the universality of religion, his great work in establishing the ideal of work as worship, work is worship, impelled him to share this knowledge with the world. I can see in Vivekananda the struggles I face, as well as the great teacher and saint he was. So I'd like to share some quotes about Swamiji and some familiar words, already spoken, I believe, from his letters and teachings that, for me, touch on facing one's fears and his encouragement to us to face our fears and strengthen our faith in our divine nature and the teachings we find so dear. From Swami Saprakashananda's book, Swami Vivekananda's Contribution to the Present Age, he says, "A distinctive character of Swamiji's message is its comprehensiveness. It is meant for all grades of men. He sees humanity as a whole. His aim is to lead every individual at whatever level or in whatever sphere of life to the highest goal along his own line of development." Again, Swami Saprakashananda has this comment. Swami Vivekananda was an apostle of strength. His words infused strength into the recipient immediately. He encouraged the cultivation of strength above all. According to him, all virtues can be summed up in one word: strength. All vices in one word: weakness. The secret of man's strength is faith in himself. It counteracts fear, which is paralyzing. What can give man greater faith than the consciousness of his own divine nature? It is the religion of strength that Swami Vivekananda taught. Swami Vivekananda says, "What makes a man stand up and work? Strength. Strength is goodness. Weakness is sin. It is fear that brings evil. And what causes fear? Ignorance with our own nature." I'd like to read from Swami Vivekananda's book, The Yogas and Other Works. We have woven this network of karma around ourselves, and in our ignorance, we feel as if we are bound and weep and wail for help. But help does not come from without. It comes from within ourselves. Cry to all the gods in the universe. I cried for years, and in the end, I received help. But the help came from within myself, and I had to undo what I had done by mistake. That is the only way. I had to cut the net which I had thrown round myself, and the power to do this is within. Of this I am certain, that not one aspiration in my life, well-guided or ill-guided, has been in vain, but I am the resultant of all my past, both good and evil. I have committed many mistakes in my life, but mark you, I am sure that without every one of these mistakes, I should not be what I am today. And so I am quite satisfied to have made them. I do not mean that you are to go home and willfully commit mistakes. Do not misunderstand me in that way. But do not mope because of the mistakes you have committed. But know that in the end, all will come out straight. It cannot be otherwise, because goodness is our nature. Purity is our nature, and that nature can never be destroyed. Our essential nature always remains the same. What we must understand is that what we call mistakes or evil, we commit because we are weak, and we are weak because we are ignorant. I prefer to call them mistakes. The word sin, although originally a very good word, has a certain flavor about it that frightens me. Another comment, this one from Swami Chetanananda. Well, it's from Swami Chetananda's edited book, The Compilation of Selections from Vivekananda. Swami Chetanananda addresses Vivekananda, and Vivekananda is saying, "Many times I have been in the jaws of death, starving, footsore, and weary. For days and days I had no food and often could walk no farther. I would sink down under a tree and life would seem to be ebbing away. I could not speak. I could scarcely think. But at last the mind reverted to the idea, I have no fear of death. I never hunger or thirst. I am it. I am it. The whole of nature cannot crush me. It is my servant. Assert thy strength, thou Lord of lords and God of gods. Regain thy lost empire. Arise and walk and stop not." And I would rise up reinvigorated. And here I am, living today. Thus, whenever darkness comes, assert the reality, and everything adverse must vanish. For after all, it is but a dream. Mountain high, though the difficulties appear terrible and gloomy through all these things, they are but Maya. Fear not. It is banished. Think not how many times you fail. Never mind, time is infinite. Go forward, assert yourself again and again, and light must come. I enjoyed hearing the letters from Swami Vivekananda, and I had picked out one. It's a very short one. It's to Nivedita. He wrote from San Francisco on the 4th of March, 1900. Vivekananda says, I don't want to work. I want to be quiet and rest. I know the time and the place, but the fate or karma, I think, drives me on. Work, work. We are like cattle driven to the slaughterhouse, hastily nibbling a bite of grass on the roadside as they are driven along under the whip. And all this is our work, our fear, the beginning of misery, of disease, etc. By being nervous and fearful, we injure others. By being so fearful to hurt, we hurt more. By trying so much to avoid evil, we fall into its jaws. What a mass of namby-pamby nonsense we create round ourselves. It does no good. It leads us on to the very thing we try to avoid, misery. Oh, to become fearless, to become daring, to be careless of everything. Yours, Vivekananda. So, in closing, to tie this all together, again, the moments when I am the most fearful, the most related I am to the teachings of Vivekananda and Sri Ramakrishna, and to come a little bit out of context, particularly Holy Mother, they lead me. Their words, their actions, their humanness makes it all within reach for me. So, another quote from Swami Vivekananda, and I will end. It's a tremendous error to feel helpless. Do not seek help from anyone. We are our own help. If we cannot help ourselves, there is none to help us. The moment you fear, you are nobody. It is fear that is the great cause of misery in the world. It is fear that is the cause of our woes. And it is fearlessness that brings heaven, even in a moment. And to pass the most famous quote of all, therefore, arise, awake, and stop not until the goal is reached. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for an inspiring summary of the effect that Vivekananda has had onto you. I especially like the reminder that saints and divine personages struggle too, and that we not only have to listen to their words, but their lives and their actions to be inspired to manifest in our own lives the same kind of strength and fearlessness that they end up showing in theirs. And that if we simply apply that strength and fearlessness, we too can overcome all the challenges that come to us. So, good description in your own life, Mary. Thank you. Our next speaker is Zach Smith.
Good morning. When Swami Chetanananda first asked me to speak at this event, after a moment of panic, my first thought was, well, what would I talk about? Most people here probably know more about Swami Vivekananda than I do. I started tossing around some ideas, and Swami said, just talk about what Swami Vivekananda means to you. And then I knew right away what I would talk about, because Vivekananda played a central role in how I got interested in Vedanta in the first place. So a few years ago, I was living in Taos, New Mexico. I'd considered myself spiritual but not religious for some time, but I eventually started having the desire for something more structured, to be rooted in a tradition. I tried a few different types of meditation, but I never stuck with one for very long before moving on to the next thing. You could say I was digging many shallow wells rather than one deep one. So I started searching for a tradition that appealed to me. I'd read a couple of books around this time that really shaped how I thought about spirituality. The first was The Perennial Philosophy by Aldous Huxley. The other is a book called The Mystic Heart, which was written by a Catholic monk named Wayne Teasdale. The overall idea of both books is that all the world's religions are different paths to the same goal. I really liked this one mountain, many paths idea, and I knew I was interested in Eastern spirituality, so these became the criteria for my search. I looked into several different organizations, but I wasn't really finding what I was looking for, until one day I stumbled across an interview with Swami Sarvapriyananda on YouTube. The interviewer asked him, "What is consciousness?" And although I don't remember exactly what he said, the Swami's answer was so eloquent that I decided to watch some more of his videos. After watching a couple, I was impressed, so I decided to find out what organization he belongs to and started doing a bit of research. I found my way to some of the Vedanta Society websites, and I read a little bit about the Ramakrishna order and some of their core beliefs, and I really liked what I was seeing. Just to be sure, I searched the internet for any scandals or controversies involving the Ramakrishna order and was pleased to find nothing. I thought maybe I found what I'm looking for. However, as I read a little more, I realized that Ramakrishna is regarded as an incarnation of God, and I got hung up on that. I'm a pretty skeptical guy, and that's a big claim. I thought, maybe this is just too weird for me. But I wasn't ready to dismiss it. I'd read some of the sayings of Ramakrishna, and they spoke to me. I never heard of the concept of avatars before, and as I read about it, I found the idea rather appealing. I figured, hey, at least they don't think their guy's the only one. So I decided to find out what this Ramakrishna guy is all about, and I ordered a copy of Ramakrishna and His Disciples by Christopher Isherwood from the Vedanta Society of Southern California. The book was great from beginning to end, but it was Swami Vivekananda's relationship with Ramakrishna that helped me get over my skepticism, because in Swami Vivekananda, I found an even bigger skeptic. Naran, who would later become Swami Vivekananda, was an exceptional student. He read widely and studied Western logic, Western philosophy, and history. The principal of his college spoke of him as, quote, "a genius. I've never come across a lad of his talents and possibilities," he said, adding rather quaintly, even among the philosophical students in the German universities. Isherwood writes, "His memory was even more phenomenal than his mother's. He could absorb the contents of a school textbook at a single cursory reading. His teachers all found him exceptionally intelligent. As he matured, this intelligence became predominantly analytical and critical. Naran was a doubter, in no mean-spirited way, but as a man must be whose drive to understand life is really urgent. He had to doubt in order to know. He dared not take anything that was told to him on trust. As a small boy, he climbed a tree whose owner pretended it was guarded by a ghost, just to prove to his playmates that the man was lying. To Naran, the truth was too sacred to be trifled with, and it was for this reason that he poured such bitter scorn on those whom he discovered to have been merely exaggerating or quibbling." Around this time, Naran had joined the Brahmo Samaj. Naran felt uplifted by the congregational prayers and the devotional singing of the Samaj, but he soon realized that he was not getting the only thing that he wanted, direct spiritual experience. His doubt was his passion. He longed to believe but could find no foundation for his faith. Books could not satisfy him, or experiences got it secondhand. But it wouldn't take long after meeting Ramakrishna that Naran would get these direct spiritual experiences he'd been longing for. In Naran's first visit to Dakshineswar, he doesn't know what to think of Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna asked him to sing, and he began singing the Brahmo song, "Oh my mind, let us go home. Why do you roam the world, that foreign land, and wear its alien garb?" Ramakrishna would later say, he sang that song with his whole soul, as though he were deep in meditation. "When I heard it, I couldn't control myself. I went into ecstasy." Vivekananda describes the scene that followed. "As soon as I had finished that song, the master stood up, took me by the hand, and led me onto the northern veranda. I thought he must be going to give me some instruction in private, but what he said and did next was something I could not believe. He suddenly caught hold of my hand and began shedding tears of joy. He said to me, affectionately as if to a familiar friend, 'You've come so late. Was that right? Couldn't you have guessed how I've been waiting for you? My ears are nearly burned off listening to talk of these worldly people. I thought I should burst, not having anyone to tell how I really felt.' He went on like that, raving and weeping, and began addressing me as if I was some divine being. 'I know who you are, my lord. You are Nara, the ancient sage, the incarnation of Narayan. You have come back to earth to take away the sufferings and sorrows of mankind. I was absolutely dumbfounded. I said to myself, what kind of man is this? He must be raving mad. How can he talk to me like this, whom nobody? But I didn't answer him and let this wonderful madman go on talking as he chose. After being back in the presence of others, Ramakrishna seemed perfectly sane. He spoke lucidly and beautifully about renunciation. Narayan continues, "Here is a true man of renunciation," I said to myself. "He practices what he preaches. He has given up everything for God." When I heard his words, I became more and more convinced that he wasn't like any of the other teachers of religion I had met, full of poetic talk and fine figures of speech, but that he was talking about of what he directly knew, of what he himself had actually obtained, by giving up everything and by calling on God with his whole heart and strength. I thought, well, he may be mad, but this is indeed a rare soul who can undertake such renunciation. Yes, he is mad, but how pure, and what renunciation. He's truly worthy of reverence. Their second meeting at Dakshineswar was the first time Ramakrishna gave Narayan a spiritual experience. Narayan recounts the story. As soon as he saw me, he called me joyfully to him and made me sit down on the end of the bed. He was in a strange mood. He muttered something to himself which I couldn't understand, looked hard at me, then rose and approached me. I thought we were about to have another crazy scene. Scarcely had that thought passed through my mind before he placed his right foot on my body. Immediately, I had a wonderful experience. My eyes were wide open, and I saw that everything in the room, including the walls themselves, was swirling rapidly around and receding, and at the same time, it seemed to me that my consciousness of self, together with the entire universe, was about to vanish in a vast, all-devouring void. This destruction of my consciousness of self seemed to be the same thing as death. I felt that death was right before me, very close. Unable to control myself, I cried out loudly, "Ah, what are you doing to me? Don't you know I have my parents at home?" When the master heard this, he gave out a loud laugh. Then, touching my chest with his hand, he said, "All right, let it stop now. It needn't be done all at once. It will happen in its own good time." Narayan's vision then vanishes as suddenly as it had come. Narayan would later say, "It changed my whole way of thinking. I was bewildered and kept trying to analyze what had happened. I'd read about hypnotism in books, and I wondered if this was something of the same kind, but my heart refused to believe it." The next time Narayan visits Ramakrishna, he's very much on guard, determined not to be hypnotized again. But he has a similar experience when Ramakrishna touches him while he's in samadhi. This time, Narayan becomes completely unconscious. Isherwood writes, "This second experience of Ramakrishna's power convinced Narayan that he was in the presence of a being whose will was altogether superior to his own. Yet it was still hard for him to submit. Narayan had always been opposed to the traditional Hindu idea that the disciple must follow his guru in blind obedience. He still felt it was wrong to surrender one's freedom of judgment to another. He was now ready to admit that Ramakrishna was more than an ordinary human being, and therefore a teacher he should follow and learn. But he was determined to test for himself everything that Ramakrishna taught him. And we cannot be too grateful for this attitude of Narayan's, for his skepticism makes him one of the most reliable witnesses to Ramakrishna's greatness. These were just the first of many spiritual experiences Narayan would have. Narayan openly made fun of deity worship and thought the idea of non-dualism was ridiculous. In time, he would come to accept both, not on faith, but through direct spiritual experience. Regarding non-dualism, Narayan said, "What's the difference between this and atheism? How can a created soul think of itself as the creator? What could be a greater sin? What's this nonsense about I am God, you are God, everything it is born and dies as God? The authors of these books must have been mad. How else could they have written this stuff?" One day, Narayan was telling Hajra about Vedantic non-dualism and his unwillingness to accept it. "Can it be," he said, "that the water pot is God, that the drinking vessel is God, that everything we see and all of us are God?" Narayan laughed scornfully at the idea, and Hajra joined in. While they were laughing, Ramakrishna came up to them. "What are you two talking about?" he asked Narayan affectionately. Then, without waiting for an answer, he touched Narayan and himself went into samadhi. And then Narayan would relate, "At the marvelous touch of my master, my mind underwent a complete revolution. I was aghast to realize that there really was nothing whatever in the universe but God. I remained silent, wondering how long this state of mind would continue. It didn't pass off all day. I got back home and I felt just the same there. Everything I saw was God. I sat down to eat and I saw that everything, the plate, the food, my mother who was serving it, and I myself, Everything was God and nothing else but God. I swallowed a couple mouthfuls and then sat still without speaking. It was some kind of intoxication. I can't describe it. If I was crossing a street and saw a carriage coming towards me, I didn't have the urge, as I would ordinarily, to get out of its way for fear of being run over. For I said to myself, I am that carriage. There's no difference between it and me. When that first intoxication lost part of its power, I began to see the world as though it were in a dream. When I went for a walk around Cornwallis Square, I used to knock my head against the iron railings to find out if they were dream railings or real ones. When I did at last return to normal consciousness, I felt convinced that the state I'd been in was a revelation of non-dualistic experience. So then I knew what is written in the scriptures about this experience is all true. Even after all of these incredible spiritual experiences, Narayan still maintained a level of skepticism towards Ramakrishna. In fact, I would later read in the Gospel that Swami Vivekananda didn't accept Ramakrishna as an avatar until the latter was on his deathbed. But rather than scold Narayan for his doubts, Ramakrishna encouraged it. He used to say to Narayan, "You must test me as the money changers test their coins. You mustn't accept me until you've tested me thoroughly." One day, Narayan came out to Dakshineswar and found that Ramakrishna had gone into Calcutta. Narayan was alone in the room and suddenly felt a desire to test the genuineness of Ramakrishna's often expressed contempt for money. So he hid a rupee under Ramakrishna's mattress. Then he went to the Panchavati and began meditating. Presently, Ramakrishna returned and entered his room. No sooner had he touched the bed than he started back. He had felt actual physical pain. As he was looking around him in bewilderment, unable to understand what it was that had happened to him, Narayan came in and stood watching him without saying a word. Ramakrishna called one of the temple attendants and asked him to examine the bed. The rupee was discovered, and Narayan then explained what he had done. Ramakrishna fully approved. Isherwood sums up Narayan's skepticism towards Ramakrishna nicely. He writes, "The violence of Narayan's struggle to believe in Ramakrishna is a measure of his greatness. He could not accept anything partially. For him, the alternative to doubt was absolute self-dedication." Years later, when Narayan had become Vivekananda, he said to one of his Western disciples who had been teased by a friend because of her doubts and hesitations to believe, "Let none regret that they were difficult to convince. I fought my master for 6 long years, with the result that I know every inch of the way." As I read this book, I could feel my skepticism melting away alongside Swami Vivekananda's. By the time I finished it, I knew that Vedanta and Ramakrishna were for me. I knew that I'd found what I was looking for. Around this time, I decided to move to St. Louis to be closer to my family, and I thought maybe there will be one of these Vedanta societies in St. Louis, and I was happy to find that there was. I moved here a little over 3 years ago and have been coming ever since. On my second time here, Swami Nishpapananda approached me and I asked him what I should read. First, he gave me Swami Nikhilananda's excellent biography of Vivekananda, and then Vedanta Voice of Freedom, which is a collection of some of Swamiji's most famous works. As I learned more about Vivekananda, my respect and admiration for him continued to grow. I now consider him one of my primary spiritual and philosophical guides. I've only begun to scratch the surface of Swami Vivekananda's teachings, but I'm forever indebted to him for pulling me into the orbit of Sri Ramakrishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach, for describing personally your journey into Vedanta. You know, it's really amazing when we hear about different people's avenues for finding Vedanta, and doubt and skepticism is not one of the ones that we hear about frequently. So it's really nice to hear you say that Vivekananda's own skepticism and doubt related to you and resonated and pulled you back in. So thank you for that description. Our final speaker is Becky Flieg.
So Swami asked me to speak on what Vivekananda means to me. Recently, my family took a vacation to the South Carolina. We drove 13 hours, and my 10-year-old son had a hard time falling asleep. He was so excited, so we were doing quizzes. And one of our categories was famous people, and I asked him, "Who is Swami Vivekananda?" And he paused and looked at me and he said, "Your hero." And that's right. Swamiji, he is my hero. He's changed my life. And when Swamiji took Sri Ramakrishna's message and brought it to America, I imagine it was like sounding a huge bell whose clanging just shook the sleep of Maya off of everyone who was blessed enough to hear. And the reverberations of that message are still vibrating, clanging awake countless souls, quiet and insignificant lives like mine. So personally, for me, I studied English literature, and I am really fascinated by the power of words when the power of words that every once in a while can communicate exactly right. I said that funny. Let me just say that again. So I love the power of words that every once in a while communicate what's trying to be expressed exactly right, so the feeling is instantly communicable. The type of communication that's like an arrow and which shoots right to the heart, so immediate understanding hits. And one thing I really love about Swamiji is that in choosing Swamiji to bear his message, Sri Ramakrishna chose a master of communication. His words are perfect. The way he conveys his message is like a shot to the heart. And I found the greatest teachers do have a kind of magic. They're such grand masters of their subjects, they're able to communicate the most difficult subject matters so simply and so effectively that one can't help but immediately understand. And Swamiji is like that to me. And many of Swamiji's teachings that have changed my life are simple sentences or short passages. And I have a little blank book that when I'm studying or reading, if I read something really fantastic, I'll scribble it down. So I have this little book of quotes. And a lot of what I'm going to share today are these little scribbles I made of Swamiji's words that really touched me. And I take this book and I look back on it. I pull it out when I'm in trouble or when I'm feeling stressed out, and I read these. So some of the teachings of Swamiji that have become part of my daily life, well, first of all, I've become pretty good at rolling with the punches. And that's due to Vedanta and Swamiji. And here are some of the quotes that I use for that. Neither seek nor avoid. Take what comes. It's liberty to be affected by nothing. And all power is within you. You can do anything and everything. Value nothing material and do not cling to it. If you cling to nothing, not even life, there is no fear. All this fear that pursues us comes from believing in matter. Make the heart like an ocean. Go beyond the trifles of the world. Be mad with joy even at evil. See the world as a picture and then enjoy its beauty, knowing nothing affects you. I've learned so much from Swamiji. He's taught me how to learn, that all knowledge comes from concentration, how to work by paying as much attention to the means of work as to its end. I try to say, "Thy will be done," and "not I, but thou," when I find myself starting to get invested in an outcome or reaction because of messages like these. Be perfectly resigned, perfectly unconcerned. Then alone can you do any true work. No eyes can see the real forces behind the work. We can only see the results. Put out self. Lose it, forget it. Just let God work. It is his business. We have nothing to do but stand aside and let God work. The more we go away, the more God comes in. Get rid of the little I and let only the great I live. And when I manage to do that, everything is truly always better. Something new that Swamiji taught me was that faith in oneself is required. He says, never lose faith in yourself. You can do anything in this universe. Never weaken. All power is yours. He has taught me to reject anything that makes me weak as poison, to bless men when they revile me, as it helps get rid of my ego, that there's no point in mourning the awful parts of the world. It will always be a curly dog's tail, that thoughts travel far, and to be careful what I think. When I work, to do what's in front of me, without thought of the outcome, to give it to God. He's taught me not to think highly of myself by giving to others, but to give knowing that we help ourselves and not the world. Swamiji to me is strength and power, and he's kept me from dwelling on my past mistakes. I love this quote. Strength is what the Upanishads speak to me from every page. This is the one great thing to remember. It has been the one great lesson I've been taught in my life. Strength, it says, strength. Oh man, be not weak. Are there no human weaknesses, say man? There are, say the Upanishads. But will more weaknesses heal them? Would you try to wash dirt with dirt? Will sin cure sin, weakness cure weakness? Strength, oh man, strength, say the Upanishads. Stand up and be strong. And this one. Throw away all weaknesses. Tell your body that it is strong. Tell your mind that it is strong. Have unbounded faith and hope in yourself. Swamiji represents to me heroic fearlessness. There have been times where in my mind I've told myself, like Mary says, face the brutes or let the dogs bark. That happens sometimes. I've been comforted by his words that love is beyond space and time. It's absolute. And in lots of personal quandaries, I've used the piece of Swamiji's advice that in a conflict between your brain and your heart, follow your heart. When the going gets rough, I think of the advice to forbear, and to strive like strong men until you die in the attempt, for you're here for nothing else than to strive. I was shocked when I first read Swamiji's teaching about how we should blame no one and ourselves for the bad things that happen in our lives. But then I came to understand that's very empowering thinking. As Swamiji said, blame none for your own faults. Stand upon your own feet. Take the whole responsibility upon yourself. Say, this misery I am suffering is of my own doing, and that very thing proves that it will have to be undone by me alone. That which I created, I can demolish. That which is created by someone else, I shall never be able to destroy. Therefore, stand up, be bold, be strong. Take the whole responsibility on your shoulders, and know you are the creator of your own destiny. And that when we take responsibility all on our own, we shall be at our highest and best. What Swamiji is to me is home. When I think of Swamiji, I think of the study circle Swami Chetanananda used to have, where we studied Swamiji's life, and how sweet those afternoons were. When I'm feeling lost in this world, reading Swamiji's words is like a slap in the face to wake me up and remember God and my own strength. I'll never forget, after having my first baby, I had been absent from this center for quite a long time. And when I finally walked back in here, I immediately saw Swamiji's portrait that hangs on the staircase. I was just overcome with emotion, and I had an overwhelming feeling of homecoming. And Swamiji does that for me. He is for me a relief and a constant spring of truth and strength that I can draw from when I'm smart enough to remember. And finally, what Swamiji means to me is practical help, a teacher who shared guidance I can use in my daily life. I'll finish with the last quote, some of Swami Vivekananda's words on practical religion. The kingdom of heaven is within us. He is there. He is the soul of all souls. See him in your own soul. That is practical religion. That is freedom. Let us ask each other how much we are advanced in that, how much we believe ourselves to be spirit. That is selflessness. That is freedom. That is real worship. Realize yourself. That is all there is to do. Know yourself as you are, infinite spirit. That is practical religion. I'm very grateful to have found him and my teacher in this life. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. A very inspiring description of Vivekananda as a hero, a practical hero in one's life. I think Becky's words also indicate to us the many avenues through which we can approach Vivekananda and be inspired by it. And today we've certainly heard that from Zach, talking about how the doubt and skepticism related to him and drew him to Vivekananda, and made Vedanta important in his life. From Mary, how about fearlessness and strength were so important in buttressing her life at times when it needed that most. From Sajal, about the importance of a well-rounded and practical education to support us throughout the rest of our lives. So I think from all four of these teachers, we can understand that however we come to Vivekananda and whatever we want to find, if we look, it will be there. So I think that's the great thing about a superb teacher like Vivekananda, is that regardless of what avenue you approach him from, you will find what you need if you look carefully enough. So I want to thank everybody who gave service and inspiration to us by participating today. So that would be Richard and Rajani and Maria-Grazia for reading, Tanvi for singing, and Sajal, Mary, Zach, and Becky for speaking. So please join me in giving them a round of applause for all of their work today. And thank you to all of you also for attending and watching. May the world become peaceful. May all men and women be gentle and honest. May all think of mutual welfare. May the minds of all be turned to the highest good. May there be devotion in the hearts of all to the Supreme Lord. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.